Okay. Okay. Let me know when you're ready, Chris.
Okay. Okay, we're ready.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the policy committee meeting. We have had the minutes to go over. Are there any corrections or additions to the minutes from our last meeting? If not, I will declare the minutes accepted as presented. Now we will go into our policy updates. And before we do that, I would like to call the roll for the record. Lane Dunton.
Here.
Reggie Silver.
Present.
Dean Edwards.
Yes, ma'am.
Sharonda Bullock. Okay, we do have a quorum, so we will go forth with our meeting. Chris, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay. So we have got 5 school board association policy updates that are minor policy updates. All of them had changes to the either the legal references or to the board policy cross references. Would you like us to go through those individually? Those 5, those policies were policy 4353, long-term suspensions, 365-day suspensions and expulsions, policy 7130, licensure, policy 7503, teleworking, policy 7820, personnel files, and policy 8510, school finance officer. Would you like us to go through those individually or no?
Let me ask the group. I think not, because it's just updates on cross references or legal references. So does anybody have any questions about any of those? Those are things we need to do. Some are required, some are recommended. But do we have any questions on either of those 5 policies?
I'm okay with how they've been presented.
Reggie?
I'm okay as well. Yes, ma'am.
Dean?
I'm okay also.
And I'm okay with it. So we'll just ask for a vote once we finish with the last policy, the policy 3460, graduation requirements.
Okay, so policy 3460 is a policy that we have already looked at with the school board association changes in reference to CTE requirements. So this policy has already been adopted with those school board association adjustments. However, our academics and accountability team had a temporary change due to COVID-19 that they would like to present to you tonight. So I'm going to turn things over to Chad Thompson and Melissa Dancy Smith to walk you through those adjustments.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
So the temporary change to the graduation requirement is, as you can see in the red writing there in the graduation requirements policy. Students graduating during the 2021 school year only will not be required to meet local elective requirements for graduation. Students may receive a waiver for up to 6 local electives and maintain eligibility for graduation. All other course requirements outlined below must be met. So this would be the temporary change in the graduation requirement as requested before. And so we bring this to your attention today as the, once again, the temporary change for the 2021 school year only.
I have a question. Oh, are you ready for questions?
Yes, ma'am.
And I just have one simple question. Do you not think that we need to put somewhere? I know the first sentence says students graduating during 2020-21 school year, but you just use the word only, which I think is very important, so there won't be any misunderstandings. Do you think it might be helpful if we put only in? That's just a question for clarification only.
If you feel like that's what we need to do, Ms. Bullock, of course, we can definitely do that.
I feel like it. What about the rest of you?
I have a question.
Yes.
sir.
So the board has already voted on this and has already approved it for 22 hours. Even, sorry, I don't like it, but oh well. But the why make it a policy change and then we're going to have to come back and have another policy change to get rid of it? Why not just know that it's been approved by the board and then maybe a memorandum sent out and that's it? That way we don't have to go through all this again.
There's the word temporary up there.
Correct, it is temporary, but it looks like it's going to be in writing. And then for it to come out, we're going to have to actually vote on it again, won't we?
Yes.
So my question is, why do it? Just, we know we've already passed it as a board and just affect it as a memorandum, send it out to the schools, and that way it's known. And that was just for this year. And that way we don't have to revisit this again. It's for me, it just seems like it's a waste of time.
Well, one thing is, and y'all help me if I'm not correct, Chad, but if we do not put this in the policy, then the policy is not going to reflect actually what we're doing. That would be thought on this.
Right.
And yeah, you are right that next year we will have to come back and delete it, but that's something that's minor. It wouldn't take that long to make happen.
Lindsay, do you have anything to share regarding that request?
Yeah, and I think that's the concern, or that would be the concern, right? Is that, you know, if we don't, even though the board has approved it, if this particular change isn't memorialized within the policy, then the policy itself, like what's happening this school year, is technically sort of out of compliance with the policy, even though it's been approved by the board. And so really, I think it's just a matter of making sure that everything is consistent. I think that's the rationale behind it. And making sure that it's memorialized in sort of a one place that is public and available online, as the board's wishes. I think that's the rationale, and sort of from a legal perspective, that seems to be the cleanest way to handle it.
And okay, and I understand people's thoughts on that. What I am concerned about at this time then is the school making rules, having the board vote on them before they come before the policy board as a matter of fundamentals. So I fear that this is going to set some type of precedent where the schools can say, hey, we can do something, have the board approve it, and then do a policy change later.
Help me remember. I can't remember now for the life of me. Did we actually approve this, or did we have a discussion about doing this? I'm a little bit at a loss.
We voted on it. We actually voted on it about 2 months ago. Me and Ricky were the only two who voted no. Everybody else voted for it.
Okay.
So would the same thing apply to the dress code that we did for middle schools where we waived it? I'm just asking. Don't you remember we just wiped that policy for the year based on students not being in school? Would it be the same? I'm just asking.
And again, that's why I think we're going down a dangerous road. I think that we have set a precedence that we don't need to set, and we need to go ahead and rein that back in, where if you're going to be changing policy, change policy the way it's fundamentally set through the policy board, and then let it go in front of the board as a policy change.
Well,
there's really no need for us to be here.
It is, Dean, in that if the superintendent and his staff feel that there is something that we need to before it actually comes to the board policy committee, if the board engages into a discussion and then a vote on that, that still does not negate the fact that we need to make the policy agree with what we have decided. And the board voted on this. We, as the policy committee, has the authority to recommend to the board, but we can't make the ultimate decision. So I think this is the way we clean up what we've already agreed to do. Now, I do know that there are times during the year that things are changed, and then we go to the policy and make changes in the policy to support whatever it is that we have all agreed to do. I don't see this as somebody going around the policy committee as such. That's just my thought.
And I'm agreeing with you on your presentation of that idea. What I'm saying is, if we've already voted on it, why is it in the meeting here?
To make the policy align with what we've already agreed to, which it doesn't until we go through this. You may call it going through the motions, but until we do this, the policy and the actual are not the same. What we're actually doing does not reflect what the policy says we do. The policy says people, students who graduate must have 28 credit units. That's what our policy says. But now we're temporarily making a change to the policy. So we've got to make the written copy match
Like that.
what we've decided to do.
And we did that when we voted on it.
But we didn't change it in writing. And we have to meet as a committee to change it in writing.
In actuality, it appears that we had the horse before the cart.
Correct.
And you're right.
And we're trying to straighten it
probably
out
did.
now.
We probably did.
So did we meet and clean up the uniform one?
Steve helped me out, but I think the superintendent had the authority to make that change without our having met prior to it. I think that's the way it went that time.
Because the agreement was that it was unanimous that we would do that just for this year. And then reinstate it next year.
Well, that's what we're doing here, right?
Right.
So we didn't meet on uniform, so that's the third way we've changed policy. It looks like this is getting out of hand, is what I'm saying. It looks like there's been 3 ways we changed policy. One, we have a policy meeting like we're doing today, which is right on schedule. We've had a policy change of uniforms where it hasn't been cleaned up in writing. And now had a policy change, board approval, but we are cleaning it up. So, I mean, it's like it just looks like we're out of control. I just think that, and it just seems that we need to rein it back in so that it needs to flow in one continuous process that everybody understands this is the way it goes. If we've had a policy change, then it has come before the policy committee, and then it's approved and goes in front of the board. I just think that there's all of a sudden there's no guidance. It's just everywhere. It's just like, oh, we're just going to make a change, which I feel the changes are okay, except for this one. Obviously, I voted no for this one, but we'll push on past that. But now we're looking at this one, trying to change it in the meeting afterwards, but we didn't do that with the uniform policy. I'm just trying to say that we need to rein it back in and have one distinct, structured way of doing things.
Yeah, who was that? Go ahead.
No, it was Lindsay. I think, and I want to go back to I want to address Dean's comment because I think he makes a good point about being consistent with how you're doing things. But I think the uniform policy, I believe somebody mentioned that was the superintendent's discretion. I think the board policy on dress codes and uniforms doesn't mandate a uniform at the middle school. And if my memory serves, Dr. Ellis, we did away with the uniform policy for the middle school for this year. Is that correct?
Correct.
And so I believe that the superintendent, I think whoever made that comment, that the superintendent has the ability to make that change. And of course, in this aspect, it was approved by the board, but I don't think we actually need to make any changes to board policy in order for that to be consistent with the board policy. I was just pulling up the uniform policy or the dress code policy now, and I don't know that you would have to make a change to that for it to be consistent.
So will we need it with this one?
Yes, you would need it with this one.
What's the difference?
The difference is that the dress code policy and I'll give you the number for it, Chris, so you can pull it up. It's It's policy 4316. It's student dress code. And so it doesn't mandate a uniform program. It authorizes the superintendent to mandate uniform programs in certain schools. And so it gives the superintendent the discretion to do that. And so to the extent that there's been some discussion about suspending that uniform program for certain schools, and again, forgive me if I'm incorrect. I believe it was the uniform, not necessarily the dress code entirely, but maybe I'm mistaken.
You're right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
I think the superintendent the ability to act, not to change the policy, but just because of this year, we as a board voted to allow Dr. Ellis to kind of make those battlefield decisions.
That's right.
yeah, and we did as a board give him those instructions.
Right,
But the
and
policy
we did.
still is in place.
So this is the policy. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yes,
Under mandatory uniform program, it says the board authorizes the superintendent to mandate a uniform program in certain schools in which he or she deems it is needed in order to promote academic standards and minimize disruptive behavior. The superintendent or designee shall do so by developing procedures in accordance with this policy, which are subject to board approval. So that it gives the superintendent the leeway to make adjustments to that policy with just board approval.
And we did approve it.
yes, we did approve it, but does policy changes need to go through the policy committee?
Sometimes, let me say this. I think that sometimes on a day-to-day basis, things happen that we don't have time to go into the policy and meet and change it before we can actually effect it, i.e. the uniform dress. I think the issue with that is totally different from the issue that we're dealing with now. The issue with the uniform policy was that we were talking about reopening schools, and we had parents who were questioning why we could not waive the dress code since they had already been out of school for more than half of the school year. And it would be unthinkable from some of their points that we would ask them to go out and buy a uniform for students who might be leaving that school the very next year and therefore would not have any use for the uniform again. And so when we talked to the superintendent, we asked him for guidelines on that, if I remember correctly. And he came back with waiving the dress code for this school year because the kids only had 2 or 3 months at most to be back in school. That's where that came from. This, on the other hand, is something totally different. It has not occurred yet. Well, it didn't occur before the board actually approved it. And all we're doing now is cleaning up what the board has already approved.
But it still will, because we're going to vote on it, these changes, the whole slate, it still goes back to the board for approval.
Yes.
Or is that?
Yeah. It does.
And I guess that's my point. And I guess that's my point. Then we're going to wait 30 days on this. It goes back in front of the board for board approval. And then for us to take it out, goes back in front of the board for board approval again. And it's just something that's temporary that we've already approved. So we're going to be approving this thing 3 times.
Well,
I
number
would-
one, we don't need to leave this on the table for 30 days. This is something that we need to let our people know that it is approved in the policy. We've already said, okay, do it, but we may not need to leave this particular policy on the table for 30 days. We may need to go ahead and get immediate approval for this one policy.
But you've already got approval for it.
We have it, but I think we're talking about two different things, Dean. You are talking about procedure. I understand exactly what you're saying. I don't like doing things after the fact, but then we're in a situation where we have had to make a whole lot of changes on in the spur of the moment. What we're doing now, and this has happened over the years, situations not pertaining to a pandemic, but situations that needed to be changed immediately. And that's the reason we don't lay a policy on the table. But for 30 days in that circumstance, I think we need to recommend approval for this for the full board, so the policy and what we're actually doing
Saying the same
are the
thing.
same. And with that being said, Dr. Ellis, do you think there is a need for us to recommend immediate approval and waive the 30 days?
I do think you need to wait the 30 days because these students are going to be graduating. That's why we brought it. Chad, if I'm correct, we brought this up in January because principals needed to make sure those students who might be graduating with 22 credit diplomas needed to let their guidance counselors need to work with them about graduating. So I think that's why we brought it in January. Am I right, Chad? That's why we needed to vote it on.
Yes, sir. We were starting a new semester, which we needed to ensure that we got the right courses for these students so that they could graduate.
So is there any possible way this can be put on the table for our meeting next week?
Our board meeting?
Yes,
We got one next week?
thought I heard that. Oh, whenever we have our next special call meeting. If time's of the essence, I think we need to deal with it as quickly as possible.
Well, there's no reason it can't be on the agenda if we publicize it as one of the items on the agenda. But I'm not the one who makes the agenda. At this level, all we can do is recommend to approve or recommend to not approve, and
Right.
let it then go through the process and let the chair and the superintendent and the vice chair decide whether this is of such urgency that we need to have it on the special called meeting.
I think the sooner the better.
And we can let them know that. Dr. Ellis hears that conversation now, and I'm sure he'll take it back to the chair and the vice chair for their input, and then they will decide as they make up the agenda for the special called meeting. Does that seem like a plan to you, Dr. Ellis?
That's a good plan. Thank you.
Are there other questions about this policy? If not, then we will look at the first 5 policies together, and then we will take policy 3460 separate. Policy 4353, 7130, 03, 7820, and 8510 are policies that only reflect an update for cross-references or legal references. Is there a motion that we recommend to the full board that these policies be approved and lay on the table for 30 days?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Reggie, seconded by Dean, was it?
Yeah,
Yes.
Yes.
That the 5 policies that I named be recommended to the full board to approve. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Reggie,
Aye.
Lank,
yes.
Dean,
Senior on mute.
Dean, take your phone off mute. Dean? Maybe he left. Is he still in the meeting, Chris?
I'm sorry. My computer jacked up. I had to bring it back around. Sorry.
Okay.
Yes, but yes, I agree.
And I agree. So we will recommend to the full board that they approve these policies. The last policy, policy number 3460, graduation requirements, that we recommend to the full board that they approve the policy and waive the 30-day period. Is there a motion?
And include the word only. I think, are we still including the word only? I think Chad added the word only in there, Mrs. Bullock.
Well, that motion would include whatever the changes are.
Okay, gotcha. I didn't know if you knew he had already done that. Okay, gotcha. So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, Donovan, you're not on the committee, so you can't second it. But thank you. Good to see you.
I'll second it for Donovan. How about that?
That works, Dean. Thank you. It's been moved by Reggie, seconded by Dean, that we recommend to the full board that we approve policy 3460 and waive the 30-day wait. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Dean?
Aye.
Lank?
Aye.
Reggie?
Aye.
And me, aye. Evelyn, aye. So then, those are the only policies we have to discuss today. That motion and the previous one carry. So is there anything else to bring to our attention? Hearing none, I declare the meeting adjourned. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Both.